Good morning, everyone. This is John for MTG Nexus doing a little bit more Boros Burn here in Modern. As a friendly reminder, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below. So last time we left off with Boros Burn on a stream. It was the same list I'd been packing for a while. Did a few small changes this time around. Added a third Path to Exile, added the second Waratara, cut the 2 core Firewalkers. It's pretty much the main change. Really need to grind some more burn leagues to know if there's any actual way to fight Oko, or if it's just kind of best to understand that's going to be kind of a losing cause. Similar to finding, like, if Soul Sisters and Ad Nauseam was prevalent throughout the format, just understanding you're going to lose certain matchups. So that said, it's pretty much any changes we've made to the deck over the last league we've played. If you want to check that league out, I'll have a card linked to that video. Didn't end well. Had some roughish matchups, had some really well played matchups, just had some bad things. All you need to know is the league started out with our opponent playing Radiant Fountain on turn 1, and really didn't get a whole lot better from there. Anyways, let's get into some matches. So the one thing I'll note about the previous league was some of the matchups were reasonable. Like, I think mono white tokens could be a decent matchup. This hand is debatably keepable on the draw. I think we'll roll with it, but obviously if we don't draw a second land, this hand could get bad. But Monastery Swiftspear into a couple of one-drop spells are usually pretty reasonable, but on the draw less effective because there's no guarantee to connect. Monastery Swiftspear will connect, but played against Amulet, which our opponent had very good draws both games against us. Game 2, maybe there was a different line I could have taken to apply more damage, but I don't think it would have mattered in the end. Death Shadow, our opponent played very, very well. Indicative of someone who's played a lot with Death Shadow. And then the mono white tokens list was just weird. Game number 1, kind of get so really, really bad basic mountain and pass. And playing extremely slowly. So I guess I'll lead on Swiftspear. If they have a bolt, they have a bolt. I mean, it's kind of whatever here. Okay, so some type of more controlling deck, obviously. Alright, Kiln Fiend deck, sure. Number 1, always kill their threats. Always kill the threats. Especially out of these Metamorphose decks. As much as I would love to get Nylon down here, I just can't afford to have our opponent have done the thing. Alright, I mean, we've done a lot of impressive cantripping. We just run out the Eidolon here. This looks like we're up against blue-red Kiln Fiend. Bedlam Reveler, delightful. Mountains and a crash through. Just gonna pass here. They have the mana advantage, we have the card advantage. It honestly looks like they're just mono red prowess with some copies of Fiery Islet as their kind of cycle lands. So, like, I have no proper way to actually kill Bedlam Reveler right now. Like, if I had one more mana, I could, but as I've learned from this position, I can easily die. Do with another Bolt effect. Sure. Not 100% sure that was the right play, but didn't want to die to a random like Chain of Spells Bedlam Reveler here, so. And ironically, we have lethal. So we have 9 points of burn between the Rift Bolt, the Lightning Bolt, the Skewer the Critics, and Boros Charm makes 13. Does deal us 8 damage, which drops us to 5. Opponent taking way too long with their tanking decisions. That's like one of my pet peeves about playing Moto, especially as compared to like Arena. Is just it takes way, way, way too long for people to think sometimes. Like that's one thing about Arena is they really encourage you to play swiftly. Um, just as an example, um, sure. opponent got there. Definitely bringing in the pass and the smash to smithereens. Beyond that, can take out the Skullcracks. Yes, they do probably have some number of Dragon's Claw coming in, but Skullcrack's not particularly effective against Dragon's Claw. Beyond that, cards that are not great. Boros Charm isn't fantastic in this spot. And submit. Alright, this hand's... is this hand keepable? Four-lander with the Eidolon. So last turn I could have Boros Charm to have cost them 2 more life, but I don't think that would have saved us, unfortunately, because they had the extra lava, whatchamacallit, in the graveyard, Lava Dart. So there were some lines I could have taken last turn that maybe would have done a little bit better, but I think the result would still have been the same. I think this hand's a mulligan, but it is kind of close. And then we immediately get into this hand, which I think we have to keep, but if we don't draw a second land, we can immediately die. The Boros Charm here. Alright, so game over. That's the one thing about Magic that can be really, really frustrating. It feels like I think Jeff Hoogland may even have mentioned this, feels like in a 3-game set you get maybe 1 to 2 of the 3 games that are actually games. Like last game was actually a game. There was decisions, there was a bit of back and forth. This game, we look at our opening 7, we have 4 lands. Has a Bolt, has an Eidolon, reasonable cards. Before lands, you flood out and die too often with that. This hand, mulligan the 6, see a 1-lander, see 1 cost spell, bunch of 2 cost spells. Could also, rightly so, mulligan this hand. This hand has the upside of both Smash and Eidolon and Searing Blaze. Unfortunately, our opponent has a very good opening hand. And then we just draw, 2 non-landers and we're dead. So, conceding to a bolt on Swift Spear. Or that. Yep, and there's the lands. So, I think the takeaway from that is, like, we could have mulliganed to 5. Okay, let's envision a mulligan to 5 that can compete with what our opponent's draw was. Say our draw was Swift Spear, or say Bolt, Eidolon, Searing Blaze, 2 lands. Just arbitrary lands that can cast, our spells. Say Fetch land and a mountain. We bolt the first guy, play Eidolon, or bolt the first, or blaze the first guy, have bolt, play Eidolon. So, like, even okay, even say a hand that's like Eidolon, Lightning Helix, Searing Blaze. So we Searing Blaze the first Soulscar Mage, we play the Eidolon, our opponents already play the things, we Lightning Helix. We have an Eidolon against, a Swift Spear and a couple other random cards in hand. Um, you know, does a 5 card hand realistically out of a burn deck stand a chance in a pseudo mirror match? I don't think so. That's why I kept the risky 6. Uh, you know, there were some play lines in game number 1. I could have Boros Charmed if I realized what our opponent was exactly trying to do. I critiqued them, criticized them for taking too long, but they did come out with a line that won the game, so I can respect that. Understanding your deck that deeply, knowing the triggers, etc. I would say Mono Red Prowess is a little bit more complicated to play than traditional Burn. You have to take into account the triggers, you have to take into account the Eidolon that was in play. That was a very complicated math counting line. They had to take account for what was in our hand. That said, I could have used a Bolt or Boros Charm at some point to break that up, especially once our opponent started taking enough damage that things would have been relevant. But I didn't see the line because the line they took was like a 6 or 7 step convoluted line. So part of that's on me for not recognizing what our opponent was trying to do. Part of that is our opponent came out and played a very good line, and we obviously had the just the simple bang 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 bang, they're dead next turn. So props to our opponent for coming out with that line. And this game was just kind of a non-game, but the reality is can I mulligan to 5 and expect to win the match? 5 cards against 8 cards, even when their deck's a lot of air. I don't think we can realistically win on 5 cards in this matchup. So this isn't a matchup where like a runaway Swift Spear or a runaway Eidolon is going to win the game. This is a game matchup of largely attrition. Last person with the creature standing is likely going to win. And, when they have one drop, kind of hard to win there. Anyways, on match number 2. Back for match number 2 on the draw again, unfortunately. This hand's pretty decent. The one weakness of this opening hand is the lack of any type of creature interaction. So no bolts, no blazes or anything. This all goes face. So could come back to bite us a little bit. Depends on what our opponent has, obviously. But this is a pretty well balanced. This feels like Tron or Dredge. Like mulliganing that much. But once again, could be anybody. This is modern. You have to be a little bit more selective with the hands you keep, as opposed to Pioneer or Standard, where a lot of times lands and spells will at least keep you in a game. See what our opponent's got here. Oh, Dredge it is. Amoeba and a loam. Yep, they have the second land, so they get to continue loaming. Or they just have Cathartic Reunion, just go absolutely ape crap. So I have two lines here. I can either play Boros Charm this turn with knowing there's a Conflagrate in the bin, or I can play Eidolon here, hope they don't Conflag this turn, and maybe use Boros Charm to and another Creeping Chill, because why not? So kind of using this as a teaching moment. As we were talking about in last match, how Burn couldn't really necessarily win off of a mulligan 2-5. The Dredge deck's a little bit different in that they are more of a... Alright, now they're gonna... Now the game is pretty much over. They get their amalgams back, they get to Conflag us next turn. But... So play this, Boros Charm them, that gives them 2, 4, 6, 10 damage, that puts them to 12. We take 4 to do that, go to 9, and then we're just dead to the backswing. There's just nothing we can do, even on our best line this turn. So, anyways, the thought process, finishing the thought process. So, their deck isn't so much a critical mass deck as it is, it requires a enabler and a dredger. So be that Shriekhorn, be that Merchant in the Veil, be that Cathartic Reunion, be that just casting Loam. Their deck requires them to have the ability to get a dredger in the graveyard and get it going, at least game one. So they can afford to be mulligan aggressively to get to that point, or else their deck doesn't function. Game 2, it gets a little bit more complicated. They've got issues with anti-hate cards, diluting their deck a little bit, so they gotta run things like Assassin's Trophy, Nature's Claim, to account for things like Rest in Peace. Obviously, graveyard hate cards aren't quite at an all-time high here. This hand's decent, so I don't have one of my Rest in Pieces. There's only 2 Rest in Pieces, so even mulliganing aggressively for it isn't necessarily a good thing. We have 2 1-drops to pressure their life total. There's some consideration for actually holding back our second land if we don't draw a third land for the Searing Blaze. But obviously I think this hand's a keep, because this is a hand that can steal the game even without them. As long as they have a slightly slower start. Cathartic Reunion, not extremely promising, obviously, but... This fetch land was actually kind of a nice draw. One thing we kind of gotta dodge is them hitting a copy of good old Creeping Chill here. Of course they hit the Creeping Chill. This is a card that makes this matchup completely miserable. Like, the rest of their draw can be complete, total, utter trash, and in the end it doesn't matter simply because they have that card in their deck. And if they have a second land, they get to go absolutely ape crap with Cathartic, so yeah. No Bloodghasts and such. See, once again, we're now kind of in the same. Actually, no, we're not, because they only have the two. Alright. I think we're obviously at a very bad disadvantage here still, but at least the Skullcrack enables us to pseudo stay in the game. Unfortunately, they're going to 10, we're going to 8, and then potentially... Oh, we're just dead. Okay. Alright. Anyways, concede the match. We were dead to 2 Creeping Chills plus the Conflagrate floating around the board plus the board, because this drops us to 8. Take 5. But anywho, on to the end of the match. Back for the third match here in this league. This hand is pretty good on the play. Obviously, any hand with Goblin God plus Swiftspear is pretty decent. Definitely keep. Let's fetch a basic mountain, conserve our life total a little bit. So humans Dragons. Cool. That Blaze gives me pause about playing our second land, but I don't think we can afford to not develop our spells here. Develop our board and try to get our opponent somewhat dead. Hopefully this isn't a Meddling Mage or a Kitesail freebooter. Okay. Feels like a Thalia. Yep. Cool. This game is over. Riftbolt can't be cast because its final card charge came off of it. Opponent cast Meddling Mage. And then, yeah. Bring in Path to Exiles, Skullcracks, and Searing Bloods. Go down on Boros Charms and Eidolons. Eidolon I tend to board out in any matchup where the card Ether Vial exists, because then it just becomes a huge liability. Boros Charm, once again, it's kind of clunky in the face of Thalia, doesn't impact the board. This hand is reasonable, does have the issue of Lava Spike obviously not impacting the board, but obviously it's a mana efficient hand, which is kind of what you want against humans. So I'm trying not to let my frustration show, but this is the kind of the If you've been watching Day 2 Dryden's channel and myself, as far as when we've both been playing Burn, it's been a very kind of rough go with Burn. Some people are still having success. Obviously, it's still a very reasonable modern deck in a lot of spots. has felt like things have not been going well for, at least for myself. So, yeah, Champion of the Parish, sure. Going to use Lightning Bolt on this. It does obviously waste damage, but I want Path Exile in case our opponent has an Auriok champion. It's possible I was supposed to play that Sacred Founder instead this turn, just to have a fetch land for trigger Searing Blaze. Yes, Auriok champion. Ah, Kitesail Freebooter. Wonderful. Dahlia, sure. Let's clear you out of the way. Let's clear you have lands. At least 2 lands here. Definitely would have played the Auriok champion first, because that just makes sense. Unfortunately, they're the version running the 2 basics. It's pretty clear we're going to Kitesail this turn, lose our last spell. Probably followed by a Meddling Mage. Another Thalia, sure. I'm kind of hoping our opponent calls the attack here. Play this tap, no reason to hold it back since they know about it. Of course they have a Meddling Mage. So if our opponent blocks. Yep. No reason to play out this land right now. Reflecting Mage, sure. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we still have one more top deck to win. Controlling their board isn't going to do us any good here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We obviously have to cast this Helix now, or otherwise we risk not having enough mana to cast whatever spell we draw. Double Swiftspear enough to buy us a turn. Block, block, take 5. there's anything our opponent could draw from here. I got nothing. Anyways, gotta get ready for work this morning anyway. So, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope these videos are at least informative, even if they are just a bit of me getting my butt kicked a little bit. Yeah, understanding thought processes sometimes are more important than results. Obviously, I think there's a couple of things we could have done differently, especially in that first match against Mono Red Prowess. But, you know, sometimes you just have these runs. But if you have any lines I could have taken differently, something I could have considered these matches gone differently, let me know down in the comments. Please be respectful. I try to be respectful when I'm presenting this information to you guys. Just, you're an idiot, you missed this, that doesn't do anything. Explaining a line process, a lot of people have come up with lines I'm just like, yeah, I never would have thought in that in a million years, but it's interesting to know and to think those process lines. So, anyways, hope everybody has a great day. I'll be finishing up this league at some point, but obviously not today, or not right now anyway. So, hopefully when this video goes up, you guys are having a good day. And this has been John from MTG Nexus. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.